You don't seem to understand, Cyborg. I never win. No, it's you who doesn't get it. I always lose. Alright, jokes aside, we know these guys have at least won a few fights, but it'd be false to say that these two have garnered a reputation as serial winners by any means. When it comes to jobbers in modern animation, these two are some of the most notable, and each hailing from a popular superhero series, those being Invincible and One Punch Man. But in a battle of these superhero jobbers, who's going over? The man who never dies or the demon cyborg? It's kind of funny, when you nickname them like that, they don't really sound like characters who would be jobbers. They sound like the best. This will be Genos from current events and Amazon's Immortal for the most part, with additional references from the handbook which relate to the comic version. But honestly, he's essentially the same character, capability wise. And so, the scenario goes that during a wide-scale assault on New York City from Angstrom Levy, the Immortal was thrust through a green portal to another reality by a surprise attack as a means from the methodical villain to help limit the amount of available heroes for his new plan to dunk on Invincible's personal life once again. As a leading figure within the Guardians of the Globe, Immortal now found himself in a strange mountainous region far from the known location to him of New York City, or anything resembling what he grew familiar with. Now, here he was, alone and confused, with no access to the Guardians, no access to the Global Defense Agency, and worst of all, no access to Fivesomes with Duplicate. Around the same time, the sudden influx of energy sending Immortal here alerted the sensors of the Hero Association, and since many heroes were recovering after recent events, Busho called upon someone he knew would always be ready and available to investigate a potential disturbance: Demon Cyborg. Accepting the call while out with Saitama, the duo made their way to the mountains, Saitama tagging along since he, in his words, had nothing better to do. Upon arrival, however, they were met with the mysterious man who was, as the kids say, wilding out due to having no way back to his dimension, no way back fight against Angstrom Levy, and no way back to warm showers with 3 duplicates. It's enough to send a man mad, and as he spots the Cyborg and Baldy pairing, Immortal raves aggressively about how he must have been sent here to be taken care of by Levi's henchmen. After all, why would 2 mysterious people show up to confront him not long after his transportation to a different reality? Noting the aggression and threatening body language, Saitama begins to question what his problem is, before Genos steps forward with his new Lightning Core model starting to engage, requesting Saitama Sensei to step back so he can show him his new power while he attempts to restrain this unstable man, his cyborg analysis identifying the Immortal as a potentially strong opponent. Saitama reminds Genos not to let this go on too long though, since he doesn't want to be late for the Flash supermarket sale in the evening if they take too long bringing this strange man in a skin-tight suit back to the Hero Association. So, who's going to job between the jobbers? Starting with the Immortal, we have a skilled combatant for the Invincible verse who has thousands of years of experience living life in all manner of ways, being a well-versed warrior in both hand-to-hand and armed weaponry, and with superhuman strength to match. The official Invincible handbook states he can lift at least 25 tons, which I'd say we'd all agree is on the lower side of what he should be capable of doing, and has even proven he can throw a man into orbit from Earth. Granted, he did it from the sky, so there's a bit of a distance unaccounted for in that claim, but we'll believe it wholesale. I'm not too fussed about labeling his attack potency since we have a general concept for his narrative strength, but the general effectiveness against the likes of Omni-Man seems to have him around country level, which I'll just roll with for today, since while he can thump Nolan enough for him to react, he's never seemed to be capable of taking him out alone. As far as combat speed goes, he should be beneath Red Rush going by how he operates in comparison. Red Rush most reasonably can be placed around high hypersonic to massively hypersonic, further proven by how one of the series' most powerful characters, Alan the Alien, who is above Omni-Man, takes multiple seconds to reach hypersonic plus speeds of Mach 10 within planetary atmosphere as stated officially. Comparing this with Red Rush being faster in combat than Omni-Man as seen by their exchange, where Omni-Man was forced to anticipate rather than match his movements, it makes it very clear that beings stronger than the Immortal, that being Nolan and Alan, should be around Mach 10 when fighting on Earth, which is hypersonic plus, but out of generosity, we'll say high hypersonic plus, which is a level above what the official handbook states. Invincible characters at this level are narratively shown to not fist fight at speeds which mirror their top flight speeds, so this combat speed range is the most reasonable visually and plot wise. If there are any galactic space races scheduled for the future, we'll look at travel speed in space via flight then, but since there isn't, travel speed is irrelevant for today unless you're trying to win the space tour in Mario Kart. Of course, we need to note that the Immortal can fly and also has has a healing factor which kicks in when he's not totally torn up, and when he gets a bit aggy, he can seem to power through attacks as long as they're not powerful enough to put his physical body in a traumatic way. Overall, despite taking a lot of losses within Invincible, this is mainly due to him being roughhoused by those with stronger attributes which he struggles to keep up with, coupled with his durability not stacking up to Viltrumite toughness as demonstrated by Mark and Nolan, which allows them to stay in the fight longer as opposed to Immortal, who can dish out punches they'll feel but has trouble taking those same ones back. When compared to most other heroes around his level and below, the Immortal is no slouch and can decimate through his experience, fighting skill, and impressive strength. Moving on to Genos, unlike the Immortal, who has been a lot more static throughout the events of Invincible, the Demon Cyborg has had numerous upgrades from Dr. Giseno throughout the course of the series due to his constant losses. Genos tends to have issues staying in one piece when fighting overwhelming monsters and can generally be too self-assured in some fights which lead him to being taken advantage of. Despite this, he's always been a powerhouse in comparison to many heroes, and one who has only gotten better and better as time goes on. Early Season 1 Genos had cannons capable of blowing through mountains and keeping up with massively hypersonic opponents like Deep Sea King, a monster who moved so fast that it made lightning fast heroes such as Lightning Max unable to witness him move from street level to his flank at the top of a skyscraper, and also was capable of moving so fast against speed of Sound Sonic that the rain seemed to stop moving. Early Season 2 Genos received an upgrade which allowed him higher firepower and enhanced attributes enough to dodge numerous lasers, which were confirmed to contain the properties of light, as opposed to just being random laser beams, placing him reasonably between massively hypersonic plus and faster than light depending on your interpretation. Genos was then upgraded again into his post G4 upgrade, further enhancing his overall firepower and speed upon what he already had. And then after a fight against Awakened Cockroach, he was able to evade attacks moving at light speed by his own claim, which isn't far-fetched when taking into account the speed increase across the series. His loss to Goketsu saw him receive yet another upgrade, known in the community as the post Super Fight Tournament upgrade, which further raised his overall stats. By this point, his scuffle with Garo had the Hero Hunter noting that Genos physically hits as hard as Tank Top Master. For reference, the Immortal is able to throw a turbine-strapped man into orbit from the sky as a show of his strength with 2 arms, who likely weighs around 500 pounds in total. Tank Top Master is capable of launching a nearly 500,000 pound cement block into the sky with 1 arm from the ground, and that would have likely gone into orbit too if not for the spaceship he was aiming for. This is mostly to say that if you're wondering whether or not Genos has the strength level to tangle with Immortal, wonder no more, and there's still more upgrades to go yet. After this, Genos was upgraded yet again for the Monster Association arc. By the end of the Monster Association arc, Genos' upgrade that he had within that event were capable of firing blasts which could scale to small planetary levels of power, going by their abilities to contend with and deflect planet-endangering attacks from Psychos Orochi. Past this point in current events, Genos was upgraded to his current model, and while the firepower standard of his latest upgrade is still somewhat unknown, it's reasonable to accept that going by how powerful he has become throughout all of these upgrades, where he was contending for lightspeed combat movement 3 or 4 models ago, he should be reasonably faster than light, going by the standards of what scaling usually accepts for that now. It's hard to say if his cannons can operate on a small planetary scale with his current Lightning Core upgrade, since the previous model was focused on all-out attack, whereas this seems like a return to balanced power, but it should at the very least be multi-continental by previous upgrade logic, and going by how effortlessly he defeated a dragon level threat in addition. Another feature of Lightning Core is that he has the ability to flash a blinding light across a wide area from his chest, bright enough to blind even Saitama momentarily, which would no doubt be useful in setting up attacks, energy or physical. Also, Genos is a very underrated hand-to-hand combatant in a cracked verse for martial arts, having held his own against the likes of Speed of Sound Sonic and even Garo at times, both fighters whose skill level operates above most, if not all, Invincible characters in pure technique when taking into account the overpowered nature of martial arts within One Punch Man. I know Genos' section was a little long-winded, but I thought it better to show you the path of Genos' power creep for legitimacy, rather than just whipping out current Genos in your face and expecting you to believe vague showings without knowing what led to his current capabilities being this strong. So, in the Battle of the Jobbers, who is taking the prized defeat? As far as combat speed goes, One Punch Man characters have been shown to consistently operate at a pace which leaves no room for narrative misinterpretation at the higher levels. Here we have characters who are not astronomically ahead of current Genos in terms of dynamic combat speed, fighting at this pace, not flying off somewhere in the Milky Way or supposedly dodging one thing randomly in space, but actually fighting consistently, timer noted in the bottom corners. Now, I want to repeat that I wouldn't say Lightning Core Genos is as fast as those guys, but as a faster than light timer, he shouldn't be too drastically far off, which would already be a world of difference in combat reactions against the likes of Alan or Nolan, let alone the Immortal, especially especially when provided with the idea that Season 1 massively hypersonic Genos is arguably already fast enough to speed blitz the Immortal past what he can realistically register and efficiently react to, and are also combat speeds narratively shown within the material, not Genos just doing one random thing at that speed and then everyone stretching it into something he can do repeatedly without issue. Additionally, Genos not only contains enough physical strength to contend with the Immortal, but he also harbors explosive power on top of that, which would be powerful enough to completely incinerate the Immortal, or at the very least blow pieces of him away with concentrated energy. What you have is a cyborg who is so fast in battle that Immortal likely could not even comprehend him, track him, or effectively counter him, while also being struck with physical blows which would render him unconscious or worse, with the added arsenal of overkill explosions and blinding light. It has to be remembered, your attack potency can't even be used to its full potential if you're unable to even reliably land your hits with intended effectiveness due to your opponent being too elusive, so Immortal will even have trouble applying the full weight of his strikes or holds on top of his compounding struggle. While some might say that the Immortal has a chance to throw Genos into space for a desperation win, there's a few reasons why that won't work. The obvious being Genos is too strong and too fast to let that happen so freely, but also since Genos is equipped with boosters which would be used to propel him away from orbit if somehow thrown. Skill wise, I still believe Genos is above him, but if you were to swing it the other way, it doesn't change anything since with the speed difference being so vast, any difference in skill is irrelevant. Maybe there'd be a case for massively hypersonic Genos, since that difference would be more akin to Omni-Man versus Red Rush, where you can factor in anticipation, but by the time we're approaching the events of the Monster Association arc with relativistic and possibly faster than light fighting speeds, that ship has certainly sailed. Some people may bring up flight and claim Immortal will just hang out in the air or something, but in character that's not what we see from him when he's engaging in battle. He will get close to trade hands, and pretending like he's just going to sit in the clouds for some imaginary video game like timeout draw is out of character, and fights don't even go like that in Invincible anyway. Invincible characters like Immortal don't really run from fights, they get stuck in, win or lose. I intentionally chose to leave out some showings like where the Immortal gets floored for about 20 seconds after being thrown against a metal post by a Mauler twin, since I think that's a bit harsh to use against him, but it's just more narrative indicators of the versus combat level not being what some people think it is when in comparison to what numerous S-class heroes are capable of in comparison. And again, this goes for the comic too. This is Invincible's material adapted to animation. Let's not pretend as if Invincible characters fight like Dragon Ball Z characters in the comic when they don't. Overall, we can conclude that Saitama won't have to step in and help Genos out once again, since in the esteemed battle of the superhero jobbers, Genos is more than capable of overpowering and setting the Immortal down with not just his current model, but arguably most of them via his far superior combat speed and comparable strength, with the option to blow him to smithereens, partially or fully if required. I don't even really know who wins this video. Genos won the fight, but the Immortal proved he's better at losing, so I guess you can decide who does the job better. Like the video, leave a comment about what you think of this matchup and which character you prefer, then be sure to subscribe for more like this in the future.